I'm Simon Ditchburn. I'm the Managing Director of the Tudor Group of companies, and we're officially closer to the roof than we are the basement. Just a few days ago, you were watching us pour this very floor that I'm standing on now. But because we've changed the system a little bit of how we're making the construction on this floor, when we were doing the reinforcing steel for that floor, we also did the reinforcing steel for the columns. We did both at the same time. So it means we can release the concrete pouring of these columns a lot quicker. So just within a couple of days, there we are. We're already making the pour. So I'm going to send in the drone and you can watch the action. Well, the time has come for the scaffolding to be taken out. That's the scaffolding that made the mould to pour that last floor that you saw on our previous episodes. Now, over the years, I've worked with some real clowns when it comes to this part of the job. They come diving in, taking out the X-frames, taking out the main support frames, and then they're surprised when the steel and plywood falls down on their heads. Now we've got a hospital case on our hands. Basically, sets of scaffolding come in squares, and as long as you release the scaffold within a square, anything that's over the top of you cannot fall on your head. So for example, our U-jacks here, 4 of them on each set of scaffolding. You release each one of those U-jacks and the entire steelwork will come down as a square. So you're actually releasing the entire section in one as a square. It can't fall on your head. Then, once you've released enough space from the U-jacks by unwinding, as I've just explained, now, piece by piece, you can slide out the plywood, slide out the lengths of steel, and now you're only left with the main frame of scaffold, which clearly isn't going to fall on your head. So you'd be amazed at this part of the job just how dangerously some people will work. Unfortunately, because you're in such a small area when you do this job, everything ends up on the floor and then we have a big clean-up job afterwards. But nevertheless, I'm going around checking today, making sure these guys do it properly. We have a room here where the scaffold has already been cleaned out. So it means that the block layers have now got to come back into the room, several of them actually, and finish off the top of the windows. Now, if you remember in a previous episode, I was explaining that at this stage, you block up to the top of the window frame, our temporary frame, and then the actual lintel will go in on the top, but afterwards. It seems like it's working backwards, but it's not. This is the best way to do it. So this is going to be a 5-metre lintel on the top of this window, and we will actually make those lintels up here on site. We'll cast it downstairs in the car park, and that will have reinforcing steel within it. We've got the crane on site obviously, so they'll be able to crane the lintel up on the outside of the building, and we'll physically lift that in as a complete lintel section that will slide in between the top of the window frame and the slab. We'll also then drill that into the floor. So the centre support right in the centre area of the window isn't just holding itself with that reinforcing steel, it's secured with double fixings that actually drill it into the slab. Okay, so it's totally supported right the way across, because this is a 5-metre span. That's a large area that you have to cover. But also I noticed that a couple of the rooms still need the block work building. Well, that's basically where the scaffold got there before the block layers, but they'll catch up with that pretty quickly. I'm in the corridor, which eventually takes you out of the building to the fire stairs, which is behind me. But it's a great opportunity and a great chance to show you those double walls, much better than I can show you next to the windows. And you can see a complete wall that will be built here, and also very clearly the insulation block on the inside and the concrete block on the outside. You've just been watching our drone footage there for pouring the concrete of the column, staircase and lift. Well, we're about 3 days after that pour, and it's now time to strip off all of the shuttering, all of the casings. So it reveals the concrete dry and solid. So basically at this point, the engineer goes to check to make sure that there are no air pockets within it. If you remember in the video earlier, you were watching a vibrating tool that's put down into the wet concrete, and that basically, it shuttles all of the stones around inside the concrete and it forces the air bubbles out. So when we release the casing, what we're looking for is a solid wall that doesn't have air pockets in it. Air pockets cause problems structurally and can cause a weakness in the column. Now, this is not the decoration finish. Clearly we go over the top of this with our plastering, so the final finish that you see is nicely decorated and smooth. So it isn't that point that we're looking for, and to be honest with you, a little bit rough is actually a good finish for the plasterer, because it gives a key that his plaster can stick to over the top. So that's all of the shuttering released, so we're away now with the next step. They can build the scaffolding now around the outside of the lift, and they've actually already started shuttering for the next floor, which will be the 6th floor. So the survey lines are now going onto the floor because on Saturday the walls start to arrive. Straight after that the scaffolding goes back in again for the 6th floor. So we'll start our next video with filming all of the walls going in position for the 5th. So we'll see you next time.